guys, and welcome back to my channel. And today I want to talk to you about this article from theconversation.com, and the title of this article is called Research on Facial Expressions Challenges the Way We Think About Autism. So as an autistic woman myself, I felt this was an important topic to talk about and discuss from an autistic perspective, and also try to balance my views on the neurotypical side of things as well. So here we go. I'll read the article out to you and see what you think. Autism researchers are starting to think that autistic and non-autistic faces may speak a different language when conveying emotion. This could mean the social difficulties often associated with autism may at least partly result from differences in the facial expressions produced by both autistic and non-autistic people. It means we may need to rethink the idea that autistic people have difficulties with expressing their emotions and instead consider that non-autistic people may have trouble reading them. The ability to read facial expressions is an essential part of non-verbal communication. If you only listen to what a person says and cannot read their face is telling you, then you only may have half read the story. Just think about a time when you said you were fine, but your facial expression had said otherwise. Being able to read someone's facial expression is crucial for good interpersonal relationships. If you cannot read someone's facial expression, it could lead to social responses that are not socially advantageous, advisable, or correct. If, for instance, you cannot read someone's sad expression, you may not provide reassurance, words of comfort, or a hug. And if you cannot tell that someone is angry with you from their expression, you may not apologise for your actions. In both cases, this could lead to less successful social interaction and greater social difficulty. A two-way interaction. According to the National Autistic Society, autism, including Asperger's syndrome, is a lifelong developmental condition that affects how a person communicates with and relates to other people in the world around them. Many studies have shown that autistic people often have difficulty reading the facial expressions of neurotypical non-autistic people. Historically, these difficulties have been framed as a characteristic of autism that leads to social problems. Our newly published paper argues that this view ignores that social interactions are exactly that, an interaction between individuals. Since interactions are necessarily at least a two-way, it's important that we also think about how well neurotypical people read autistic facial expressions. The findings from two recent studies suggest that many neurotypical people find it difficult to read and interpret the facial expressions and body movements of autistic people. So why do neurotypical and autistic people struggle to read each other's facial expressions? One reason could be that autistic and neurotypical people produce different facial expression. Differences within facial expressions. While researchers don't yet know what is exactly different about the facial expressions produced by those groups, our review of the literature suggests that there may be differences in the appearance, frequency and duration of the facial expression. Of course, not all autistic people are the same, and there will be some autistic people who make facial expressions that are really similar to the neurotypical expression. However, in general, it seems that autistic and neurotypical faces may convey emotion differently. When feeling sad, for example, an autistic person might remove their face into an expression that would not be used by most neurotypical counterparts. There is a video which I'll link as part of the article in my video description below at the end. Because this expression is different from what a neurotypical person may expect to see, they might not recognise that the autistic person is feeling sad. Similarly, because the neurotypical person expresses their sadness in a different way from the autistic person might not recognise the neurotypical sadness. In both these scenarios, they might fail to comfort each other and appreciate the response given. So, why does this matter? This means that what has previously been thought of as a social deficit in autistic people may actually reflect a mismatch in facial expressions produced by both autistic and neurotypical people. This is really crucial as it takes the element of blame away from the autistic person and instead proposes that these difficulties are a product of autistic and neurotypical difference. There may also be some really promising outcomes of these findings. For instance, in the future, caregivers and clinicians could be trained to read the language of autistic facial expression, leading to a reduction in social interaction difficulties. Since the research suggests that autistic expression may be unique to each individual, these support programs may need to be personalised to each autistic person. These findings also have implications for the clinical diagnosis of autism. Currently, autism spectrum disorder are diagnosed via observations of social ability and behaviour by a qualified clinician. Importantly, a non-autistic clinician may evaluate someone as lacking in facial expression when in reality these expressions are just different to the ones that they would produce themselves. A different style of emotional expression is falsely interpreted as a lack of emotional response. It may be time to reframe the idea of social difficulties in autism and shift away from the idea of deficit towards one of being a difference between autistic and neurotypical interaction. So that is the report, and I'm now about to give my actual feedback, my autistic view as someone on the autistic spectrum. So as somebody on the autism spectrum, I find this article very interesting because it also explains about the neurotypical person struggling to read facial expressions. I feel that this is more of a balanced way of looking at emotions and body language. For me personally, I feel that a lot of neurotypical people do not say what they mean with their emotions, which leads me to get very confused with how to respond to their questions or statements. And I find often I get myself into trouble for misreading the situation of what is being said to me. I would find it easier if the neurotypical person would explain what they mean to me rather than having to try and guess. Yes, I agree with the article writers that the interaction is a two-way process, but again, it's much more difficult for people on the ASD spectrum because it's about turn-taking, which is not easy for us. I think it's also important to realise and to note that this article in this situation will be different to each autistic person on the spectrum, as we're not all the same. We're on a different level: verbal, non-verbal, low functioning, high functioning, so this also needs to be looked into too. All around though, I am impressed with this article and the way that it's been written, and it was written by Connor Tom Keating, a doctoral researcher at the University of Birmingham, and Jennifer Cook, a senior researcher at the School of Psychology at the Uni of Birmingham. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please give it a like, comment, share and subscribe for more, and I'll see you next time. Bye!